Hey, what's up, people? Okay, we're doing it. We tried to do it earlier, but the internet was not working. Um, it was just like not working at all. Get it to work, and so had to postpone it. I couldn't even like use the internet honestly, so I couldn't even like recording. I tried recording instead, but can't even do that. So here we go. We are picking up where we left off. Same old, same old. Um, we had modified the enter continue text function um, to work on the client side as well as on the server side. Now, the way that we modified that was oh, that's not it. Here it is. Okay, so the way that we modified it was right here. We made it to where whenever we're operating from the client side, while multiple choice active is equal to true, we draw the window over and over so that the player can make their choice, and that inserted right here. So there we go. Okay, so yeah, we actually like reviewed when I did my little stream earlier. I'm not gonna go over this again. Basically, the current form of the current form of this section is, in my opinion, worthy of the double stamp of approval, which that's when I do pound double colon, and that's so we load that bad boy in, namely the game ID, and then we check it. And yeah, game ID is not equal to none. That means we did have it changed, which means a game had started. Initially, it is set to what is it? I'm gonna go ahead and say no to that one, baby. I do love me some Ferg, but yeah, we're gonna pass on that. Okay, so we have the game ID, and yeah, it's initially none. So yeah. Okay, and then we say if P1 game selected choice. I just clocked out there. I'm back. I'm back in. Reincarnated exact twin, exact 10, exact 12, exact self. Let's see if it's working. Let's see, is it working, dog? Or is it ain't? Is it or is it ain't? I can ass. The oh man. Oh man. Let's see if it's working. Okay, yeah, baby. Let's see yeah, it. Baby. It's working. We working. All right, see ya. Back to it. All right. So if P1 select choice is equal to start new game, yeah, if they choose to start a new game, then we offer them the option using the multiple choice function to connect to the remote server or connect to the local machine. Okay, and then if P1 game selected choice equal to connect to remote server, get unique SS game ID from server for reconnecting. Okay, right, and then save game ID to save file. Okay, so this is really where we left off. And it looks like, well, we have to connect first. We would need to connect, but to what? And I don't. Well, this is new to me. This is something that's new under the sun for me. I've never like okay, so currently this project is structured to allow for you to connect to the server. And once you are connected to the server, that's pretty much it. There is no like multiple games going on sort of thing. Um, there is the one game. So there's not like logic for that. But in the final world that we would want to live in with this project, that world will have the option like for multiple games on the server side. So like the server will be hosting many different connections and will handle those connections in such a way as to pair them up in twos to create matches. And so this is all new to me. This is a next step into the dark unknown. So what? I don't want to overcomplicate this. Well, we do need the ID. But first of all, we have to connect to the server. So I guess like well, it would be just like normal, right? Like how it when I say normal, it would function the same way that it functions now, right? Where you call and connect, and that is going to let's look at it. So nconnect, what exactly does nconnect do? It if local is equal to false, then self network socket connect self. Okay, so we did do some of this code. We have the remote network endpoint versus the local, and yeah, so if we're connecting remotely, that means the endpoint is not going to be the local server IP address because see we have this way of getting our local machines IP address, which is to connect locally for basically like couch co-op. But in this instance, we would pass the local arg as false, right? So if local is equal to true, this would be elif local is equal to true, aka couch, let's call it couch co-op. Yay. So I'm not really feeling this. It's okay. It's not great. Anyway, So we already did. We pass it with the correct arg. So we would connect first, and this is going to connect us to the server. So now we're connected to the server. Yeah, so basically everyone that's playing remotely is just going to get connected to the server. And there's just going to be like, you can picture like my fingers as different connections, you know, and it's like client 1 goes here, client 2, client 3, client 4, client 5, so on and so forth. And that's going to allow like multiple clients to be connected to the server, and then from that point, well, how do they connect to each other? Well, that would just be handled server-side logic. They're not really connected to each other. They're just connected to the server. So there's really no change in the overall structure. It's just more on top of it to account for more than 2 clients and to divvy them up. But I feel like I'm being a little bit dishonest if I say that the server file is currently equipped like to handle what I'm speaking about. Like there's gonna be some modifications that need to be done, like probably like before I can go further in this file. Let me think about this. I just want to make sure like I'm going in the right direction and I'm not, you know, taking steps in the wrong direction. Slow and steady and in the right direction is the most important thing. So this will connect us to the server. And so basically, yeah, now we need to go to the server file. Okay, that's better. And we're going to basically create like, how do we word this exactly? Create like a game. Like this is this client and this client's game, and this is their game ID. And like we could just start at 1 for each game. Like game ID would be 1 for the first game, 2 for the second, so that like the server will store those IP addresses. I don't want to say, okay, yeah, I think we started to go through this before. Like on the server side, didn't we work on this? I forgot to set my timer, baby. Why didn't you tell me? Baby, why didn't you tell me to set my timer? Why didn't you tell me to set my timer? Damn. How far are we into this? Am I even streaming right now? Yeah, okay. Why is this different? Only God knows. Computer acted funny. We're 14 minutes in, baby. You know what that means? That means the timer needs to be set to 68 minus 14, which is 54. Look at my maths. I'm so great at arithmetic. So what needs to happen, baby, is that we have to go to the server, make some funny faces while we think really hard about what we're supposed to be doing next. And we're giggity going deep. And oh, dude, I know that we started to address this. I remember, because I was saying we couldn't save the IP address because the IP address would be different sometimes. I'm like, I worked on this. I did this already. But what did I end up? What did I end up like doing? What was the final thing that I did? Oh man, can I see like a change log for this file? Like, I'm pretty sure that's possible. Oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Okay, here we go. So, okay, so it's this section. It was this. This is what I was thinking of. Ah, okay, gotcha. Right here, right here, right here. Here we go. So let's look at this. This is server-side logic. Put your big boy pants on, okay? Or big girl pants. For all you ladies out there. While server client 1 online is equal to false. Or server client 2 online is equal to false. So until both clients have connected, wherein their online attributes have become true, we're going to be stuck in this while loop until that happens. Right, okay. And we're attempting to connect to whoever's attempting to connect, right? Okay. Now, this is all good and dandy, right? Then we assign their con-adder, okay. And then we say con1 self-adder 1 is con-adder, so on and so forth. If it's the second connect, that means we're dealing with connection 2. Right. And now we have this comment here. Have to account for the fact that they may be the same client, but with a new IP address. If use IP config, renew, etc. Correct. So this is true. And this is what I was getting at here on what I need to do, like, to get this right. Well, let me read this code first. So we have else for subsequent connections whenever a player DCs. But, like, this comment, I think, actually would apply just in general. Like, it would apply not just for reconnects, but for also for initial connections. Basically, like a client ID, like whenever they connect initially, when we accept their connection, like the first thing we do isn't the first thing we do normally is actually get client ID, right? Let's go. Let me see. So this is the refactored section, but in the actual like section, why does it do this? Here we go. So bam, right here. Initially, the first thing we do in the original file that's not being like the non-refactored version of this client file, the first thing that happens is while client ID is equal to none, we wait to receive the client ID, baby. Yeah, so if ready, add 0 client ID. So we get the client ID through the connection, and this is giving me yellow squigglies. It's because I got all this comments above, probably. Because I didn't put anything under this except baby. There we go. That should get rid of my... No, it didn't. I'm not worried about it. Anyway, so we actually already have this, like, code. This has to happen after the connection, right? But why do I not see nConnect? Like, where is nConnect at? While true. Where is... Where is the connect in the normal main section. I'm not that dumb, am I? Like, obviously that was there originally because it's here. Con equals in connect. What are we talking about here? Like, what do we not? We don't use in connect. This can't be right. There's no way. Like, you have to. End client. Let me look at this. End get client ID. Yeah. So this assumes the socket has already been established, right? And the socket is like the connection between the client and the server. So get client ID has to happen. Yeah, because it passes in con. That's why it's squiggled, because it doesn't exist. Which means we must have made a boo-boo. See? See that? See this? Right here? Okay. I understand. I see now. Why is this different? Bring this over here. I need to look at them side by side. You must be compared to one another. We must scrutinize your differences. While choice finalized is equal to false. Okay, so this just has been completely restructured. Yay. Okay. We don't use the while. The while Oh, right, because normally before we used input, and then we were like, why would we use input like a caveman when we can use why would we be like cavemen when we have discovered fire already and we can use the graphical interface, which is the pie game. So now we're gonna use the pie game instead of caveman shit. Anyway, okay, I understand. I see now. Okay, you go back over here where you belong and you can rest. You go rest. Take a break. Okay. Get out of here. Okay, so we have to connect first. Facts established. Very, very clear. We're clear on this. Okay. Next is, yeah, so we basically have to send a client, like the client has to send a client ID. But the question is, how do you generate a client ID? You can't generate it server side, because the whole point of like the server side, I mean, the whole point of this client ID is to account for if the client reconnects and they have like a different IP address. We need an identifier that doesn't change whenever the client disconnects and gets a new IP address. but we can't use the, like, let's just say on the client side, we started off with 1. But since all the clients, they're not connected to each other, how are they gonna be, like, they're not gonna know, the next client's not gonna know, hey, there's already a client 1, so I'm gonna be client 2. They don't have knowledge of that. Thinking maybe we could initially connect them. What if we just initially connected them and then let the server generate their client ID and then sent them their ID, like, which is what already happens. And then they just like, and then the client receives that ID and then saves it, so that, yeah, that's duh. I'm an idiot. I was overcomplicating this. So yeah, all they need to do is receive the client ID from the server like they already do, dumbass. And they just need to save it. So it could be generated on the server side. I'm dumb. You generate it on the server side, it would start at 1, and then every client that connects, you just increment it by 1. So the first client gets client 1 ID sent to it, second client gets client 2 ID sent to it, and whenever the client receives its associated ID, it saves it to the save file, so that if it reconnects after a disconnect or whatever, it will have saved that data to its hard drive, and bada bing, bada boom, when it reconnects, it's going to be like, hey, it's me, client 1, yo, I know my IP is different, but it's still me, trust me, because you know how? I know because I got this in the save file. You sent this to my special number. Yeah, so there we go. Problem solved. Easy. So that's what has to happen first. So, and this would happen either way. This would happen regardless of whether they connected remotely or if they connected locally, right? Like, even if they connected to the local machine, the server still has to assign them an ID. So that means we shouldn't put this block of code inside of the if and elif. We should actually put it like right here. Okay, so we got a lot going on. We're trying to figure out the exact place to, because this is going to have to happen in all instances. And I was trying not to put it after nconnect in multiple places, but we might. We might need to do that. You feel instead of trying to be clever, because we would need it for when we started a new game, so we would need it here in this spot, and then we would also need it here if we were starting a new game but connecting locally, and then we would also need it if we were reconnecting to, well, would we actually? No, if we were reconnecting to the game, that means we already would have the client ID saved, right? I think so. Yeah. If we already, if we're reconnecting, that means we already have the game ID. And if the game ID isn't sent until after they receive their um, client ID, then that means, you follow here. If they haven't received, or if they have received their game ID, then that means they have received their client ID, because the client ID comes first. So in this case, the elif here, we actually don't need to receive the client ID. Let me just add this here. In this case, I'm gonna change to capital case. In this case, we wouldn't need the client ID. We wouldn't need to get/receive the client ID, since we would already have received it previously. In this case, we wouldn't need to receive the client ID, since we would already have received it. We would have already received it. We would already have. Would already have. Honestly, I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It's good enough English for me. When did you get received the client, since we had already received it previously? We would instead assign it by loading from save file. I think. So we will need to get received this client ID from SS, since we had received it previously. We already had the game saved. Means we would have client ID saved as well, since it is game ID. Smooth typer. Alright, now we continue. If P1 game selected choice. So okay, so we it's here, baby. Get client ID from server side. We need to get our unique client ID from server side. Request, receive, and save. We'll split this up into three things. We're gonna request, we're gonna receive, and we're gonna save it. So we're gonna request unique, then we're gonna receive unique, and then we're going to save. Yay. So there we go. We request, we receive, and we save. And then we need to request unique SS game ID. Unique SS, or unique game ID from SS for reconnecting. What is this? Okay, for reconnecting. And then request, and then we need to receive. So we're doing the same thing here, except this is game ID. So, okay, I'm putting the pieces together. Ultimately, what this means is we are going to On the server side, if the client ID is an odd number, that means generate a new game ID, right? If the unique client ID is 1, that means that's the first client out of 2 for the new game. So for client ID 1, we would then generate the game ID, which would be 1, and we would send it along with the client ID. So we would send client 1 the client ID of 1 and the game ID of 1 to that client. And then when the second client connected, we would send them the client ID of 2, the game ID of 1. And then when the third client connected, we would assign them the client ID of 3 and the game ID of 2, because now it's the third player, meaning the game ID should be set to 2, because since there's only 2 clients per game, the third client would exist in game number 2. And same thing with the fourth client, they would receive client ID number 4 with the game ID number 2. You feel? And then 5 would be associated with 3, 6 would be associated with 3, 7 would be associated with 8, 8 would be associated. You see what I'm saying? Or, I'm sorry. 7 would be associated with 4, and then 8 would be associated with 4. Yeah. So ultimately, we could just do this together. Like, instead of doing 2 separate operations, we could do the game ID and the client ID together. So we're requesting unique client ID and game ID, and then receive unique client ID and game ID, and save unique client ID and game ID. Bam. So now we just have these 3 things where we request the unique client ID and game ID. And I'll just add a note here that says, I'll put this right here. Client ID will start at 1 and increment server side every time a new client is connected, but put some in line as well. We'll say game ID will start at 1 and increment SS every time client ID is incremented to an odd number, i.e. client number 1 equals game ID equal 1, client ID equals 2 equals game ID equal 1, and then client ID, I didn't write this right. Let's do this the right way. Being a little lazy there. Let's do this correctly. Client ID equals 1. Game ID equals 1. Client ID equals 2. Game ID equals 1. And then just copy this whole thing. And then this would be client ID equals 3. Game ID equals 2. So yeah, There we go. That's straightforward. Um, so this requires server-side logic implementation. So yeah, that's what we need to do. We need to add this code in on the server side now. So would we modify woohoo? I think you're lying. I think you're lying. Well, frankly, I'm just not sure. Would we modify the get client function, get client ID function, this get client ID function? Because currently, oh, we do verify received. I forgot about the verify received. Why is this string 1? Okay. So this is the first thing that gets sent from the server. So it always would have the verify receive ID of 1 because it's the first thing that gets sent, aka the first thing that gets received by the client. Is that correct? Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Yeah, so this is always 1 because it is the first thing received by the clients. Subsequent. Receive, what do we call them? Receive verification. Receive verification IDs would be like a higher number. But I'm wondering, is the logic in place on the server side that make sure that it doesn't use the number 1 as the send ID for subsequent sends? You feel what I'm saying? You probably don't know what I'm saying, but I know what I'm saying. I be knowing what I'm talking about. You might not know what I'm talking about, but oh damn, son. It's too late for coffee, ain't it? Shit. Okay, so we do have to check this. I don't know if I'm going to work tomorrow, boys. It's gonna be snowing down here in South Louisiana. We're supposed to get 3 to 5 inches of rain today. Where is it at, boys? Anyway. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to go to work tomorrow. I got sick days. They might make us use a sick day. I don't know. We'll see. I'll find out. Okay, so we do need to. I'll say. Noticed that this is supposed to be associated with the server side send ID number 1, but is it actually considered number 1 server side, or do it not or do it not consider it number 1, like aka assigns a subsequent send ID to number 1 val. You feel what I'm saying? Yeah. So this is supposed to be associated, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So we'll take care of that another time, baby. The real question that we're trying to answer is, there's no point in asking a question to answer. We're trying to answer questions, okay? Can't answer a question with a question. Client ID equals int. So the original question was, are we going to are we going to get sent the game ID along with the client ID? If this were the case, we would need to rename this function and add on to it. I feel like we probably should. You know? I think we should. But if we refactor it and change the name of it, then we're gonna have to change like original code in the original client file to be able to test the game, or we would have to modify the original client code as well to adhere to these changes. So instead of like creating a network refactor file, because we're not making that many changes, I think what we would do is we'll just basically leave this function in place as it is, and then we'll duplicate it and give it the new name, new and improved, and therefore we can continue to operate from the original client file which calls this function as it is. Because if we were to make that modification, that would mean we would have to modify the original client file to get the game ID as well, and I mean that's fine. That's not a big deal. Like, how big of a deal is that? It's not a big deal. It's really not at all. All we would do is we would just change this little section of code it would say client ID, comma, game ID equals n dot get client and game ID. Because you can do that, right? It would be I forget. Can you do that? Can you assign in values in that way, like x comma y equals a tuple? I get confused about that. Let's check. Let us test. Test reminders. Okay, so let's go here. Let's put next. And ooh, I run out of space down here. Move that down. Copy this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 5 spaces, baby. So we're gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have to do 6. Bam. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 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 6. And we're just gonna. Yeah, we just do that a few times. It just populates it. So then we go up here, and this is how we find the next test segment, is by searching for the next keyword in the file. And we're going to make a test here. We'll say x, y equals 1, 2. Now this, I don't know if this will work, but let's see. Okay, so that does work, actually. Well, it seems to work. Let's absolutely verify that it works correctly. Okay, that's easy. What is the type? What is... So it should just say... int. Okay. Now, if we did tuple, would this work? True. True that. I know there's something similar to this that I'm thinking of that doesn't work. But anyway, it works, so that's all that matters. That's all I was asking. And we'll call this assign 2 vowels using comma. Same line. Or we'll just leave it like that. That's fine. Reminder that we can use x, y equals 1, 2. This code is valid and doesn't throw any errors. Big money, honey. Big money, honey. All right, cool. So now that we have reminded ourselves of that simple truth, where were we exactly? Okay, client. Yeah, we were gonna say, what if we changed the? What if we changed it to be get client endgame ID? The only difference, well, we would have to modify the server. Well, which we already are, so it doesn't even matter, like, it doesn't even matter, like, we would have to change it on client, as well as client refactor, if we're gonna change server without creating a server refactor file. You feel? Because if we change server, well, actually server, it doesn't. Well, yeah, the server side code would be altered so that it would send in reaction. Well, this is not like, we're not requesting it. So on the server side, the server just sends the ID immediately. It doesn't wait for a request. Once the client connects, it sends it the ID. The get client ID function is run on the client side to get it, not to request it. So if we modify the client code to receive a client and game ID instead of just a client ID, that means the server side code would have to send the client and the game ID. So if we try to change the server to send the client and the game ID, but the client only expected the client ID, then we're gonna have issues here because there's gonna be data that has been, you know, received in the or is next in line in the buffer, and we're going to assign it as if it were like something else. It would cause a bug. So yeah, I think we'll just change it overall in all places, in client and client refactor and in server. You know, well, if we didn't want to do that, we could just create a new function called get game ID. It's just a matter of like, why would we make two sends when we could just make one send from the server side? We could make one send that had the client and the game ID as a tuple, as opposed to sending the client ID and then sending the game ID. When like we would already know, like we don't need to separate those operations. The only reason we would separate the operations is because the current form of client get client ID function expects only the client ID. So yeah, I think we'll just change it completely. Yeah, so let's go ahead and do that. That'll probably be the last thing we do because there's only 9 minutes left. So let's do that. Let's we're going to, where should we go first? Change this. Well, I guess what we'll do here is we'll comment this out. Why didn't that work? I don't know. What's wrong? It's like my keyboard not working. There it goes. We'll say, is this how we use? 2 is being replaced and 1. I get mixed up on that. So now we'll say client ID, comma, game ID equals n.get client and game ID. And we could use the ampersand. Isn't that what it's called? Ampersand is the and sign, right? I got that. I think that's right. Get client and game ID, or we can just use the word and. It's no big deal. So get client and game ID, and it would be called the exact same way, just with a different name. We'll just put a note here that says Vecchio below line 120.25 replacing line. Man, I can't type at all, dog. Replacing below line, leaving until 100%. Let's see this. But being replaced by above line. leaving it to 100% certain. Replacement is valid. Yay. All right, there we go. Now we are going to go to client refactor. We're going to do the same thing right here. So as soon as we connect, we would then call that, and then so we can get rid of this. Well, that's what this is, so we'll div it out. Like so. Yeah. Okay. So it's got a little bit of space, that way we know this section is like its own little section. So we'll actually just div it like that. There we go. And we'll remove the notes later once we I want to make sure we do this correctly. We're not gonna have enough time to finish it all the way. Okay, so now we're gonna do this again. So we'll copy this and we're gonna paste this immediately after connect. So when we're connecting, starting a new game, yeah, either option, if we're starting a new game, whether it's remote or local, we are still gonna want to get the game ID. Well, no, wouldn't it be if we were connecting to a local, like wouldn't the game ID always be number 1? You know what I mean? Like there's only one game that can go on if it's local. Yeah. So we wouldn't even need to get, but there's no way for the server to know whether they're connecting locally or not. So we sent them something to notify, like, so it's no big deal. It's just as much work to just get the client and game ID. It would just always be number 1, right? So it's that simple, I think. Okay. And I'll put a note right here. Note, local game ID would always be number 1, right? Still easier to just get from SS via function instead of notifying SS and requires sending this info to SS, which is just as much work as doing below func. Yay. Alright, so next we'll change the name of the network function. What are we doing here? Get client ID. Okay, yeah, we're gonna change the name of this bad boy. Well, what we'll do, how about this? We'll paste it in. We're gonna create a new div. We're gonna div it up, baby. Div it up. Now we're gonna say def. This is gonna take self socket. Self and socket. And now this is going to be copied. Pasted. There we go, baby. Client string, client ID. Notice that this is supposed to be associated with this. It's actually blah, 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 blah. Alright, so and what we'll do is we have a double div. We don't want a double div. No double divin. This is gonna get commented out, and we'll say EEE. No, that's alright. Below function 120. 2025 being replaced by above function, leaving until 100% certain replacement is valid, baby. Yiggity yay, yiggity yay. So just roll with it here. All right, so now we got our new function, and it's gonna do more. It's gonna receive 2 bytes, right? Well, like, would it just be 2? And then we would say, whoa. Client ID string. Is it a string? Why do we? Why is it a string? And then you decode it, and it's only 1 byte. Why would we not just send it as an integer? Is there a reason for that? That we send it as a string? Why is this a string? That's what I need to know. I'm not gonna ask any further than that, okay? We're not gonna dip too deep into the questioning. The question is left short. Why is this a string? Is it actually? And contained within that question is a plethora of other stuff that we will discover. So we have client ID string. This would actually now be, if it is a string, it would be client ID string, comma, game ID string. Okay? Correct. And then we would say decoded client ID string equals client ID string decode. We wouldn't be able to do that on 2 lines, on 1 line, would we? We could try. I don't think we would. Y'all feel? Like, this would have to be, this could be a 1 line operation. Y'all feel? But not this one. Decoded game ID string. Client ID string decode. Then we would say comma game ID string dot decode. Baby. I don't know if that would work. I don't know if that's a if it's I don't know if it's thou can work like that. Oh, okay. I have hit the time. I'm just gonna put a note here. Unsure if we can actually put this on 1 line. Might have to use 2x lines for this. Yeah, but we're gonna stop right here. What we have to do next is we have to modify the server side logic so that it sends the client ID and the game ID and that it increments properly. So I'll just put 1/20/25 stopped here. 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6, and we forgot to put our asterisks. If you're unsure, just asterisk. Yeah, feel? The asterisk gets your attention. And we need to do this. Point up to that one and say, next, add logic into server pi so that it sends the game ID along with the client ID in one single send as a 2. also have to add proper increment logic for game ID, client ID. Okay, and I'll put to account. Well, we don't even need to worry about that. This is fine. No need to be extra here. So this is line 58 in. Whoa, 58 in network. Yeah, line 58 in networks. Let's go to devlog. And I'll just copy this actually. Back over here. Do this. Stopped at line number 58 in network. Pie. Baby. And we're gonna stage and stage and commit our changes. It's going to be 5:25. So this is going to be an hour and 13 minutes. So we'll just say 1.25, close enough. And this went on to 5:23. This goes from 5:24 to 5:25. Yeah. Alright, and we continued working on refactoring the beginning section of client refactor. And we began modifying network pi and server pi to conform to these changes, and we'll say client ID. The fuck is this? Slash game ID. There we go. Alright, bam. Now we can copy this. This is going to be our devlog. So, okay. Well, we're not going to be able to do a game test because we modified code in one file, but not the file that it relies on. You know what I'm saying? So we are in the root project directory, which is capital C Canasta. Git branch, we're on the right branch, which is called secondary. We're going to git add dot to add everything. We can ignore the LF warnings. We're going to do git commit -m double quote paste. There goes our devlog. So that's going to be our commit. We successfully committed 5 files changed, 160 insertions, and 25 deletions. Now we're going to do git push Canasta secondary. There we go. So this should push to the remote repository, and it successfully did so. Now we're going to exit out of this bad boy, and we are going to go to programming projects Canasta. We're going to copy this one. We're going to back up to the backup. We're going to delete this old boy. It's getting replaced. So we're going to paste in the new boy, and we're going to dive into it. We're going to go to tisx. We're going to go to disevlog. We're going to go to the isEnd and make sure that the dis8 is correctly reflecting today's, which it is, so we know we did it correctly. Now we can rename the folder to the date of today, which reflects the most recent local backup. Or, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, guys, that was it. We're done for the day. I might come back a little later. We'll see. It's up in the air right now. You see my laundry back there. My pillow and blanket. I gotta put that up. Anyway, I forgot to move it. All right. So yeah, we're done. Good progress overall. Pretty happy. Like I need to get this section done. It's, it just takes a long time. That's just how it is, and it just takes a long time. I don't know what else to say. But I think I'm doing it right. I think I'm going in the right direction. I'm not making mistakes. I'm not assuming anything that's gonna have to be like undone. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm I'm not going to have to go back and redo this again. Like, we're doing it right the first time. At least, I'm pretty sure I am. I'm almost always wrong when I think I'm doing it right that first time. Just, that's how life is. You think you're right and then you're not, and then you have to go back and fix it, and, you know, that is programming. It's a life cycle. Rinse and repeat. Code, brainstorm, code, what you think is right, find out it wasn't, fix it, code, what you think is right, find out it wasn't, fix it, and then eventually you get it right and you're done. So next we're going to implement that um, new game ID, client ID system, which is really easy. It's going to be like 5 lines of code on server side. That should finish that up. And yeah, that should pretty much finish this little menu screen section that we were working on. For the most part, you know, not completely, but like for the most part, that should be pretty much done, which is cool because then that leaves us to work on the save system, which is gonna be more complex and more difficult than the menu screen thing that we're doing right now. It's gonna basically require a client-side second thread. So we're going to be multi-threading on the client, probably. I'm not sure about that, but probably going to use multi-thread. And we're going to have an entire thread that's dedicated to saving the file constantly, keeping all the data up to date, and we're going to have to create those functions that are going to reconnect and like load in save data from the save file in a smart dynamic way that allows for us to have a system that loads back perfectly no matter where a disconnect happens, whether it's soft disconnect, hard disconnect, you rage quit, shut your computer off, whatever, it will still be able to bring you back in like magic. So anyway, have a good day. See you tomorrow, maybe, if we have power. I know it's supposed to snow and all that, so if you're going to work, don't die for your employer. If you have to call in, if you do drive to work, just be late. If you be late, you go 20 miles per hour because you don't feel safe on the road, go 20 miles per hour. Don't go 60. I saw videos of pile-ups from black ice. It's literally one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen in my life. So it's just fucking terrifying. Anyway, be careful. Have a good one. I'll see you next time. Peace.